everyone, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about naked eye observing and what kind of things you should be looking out for when you go observing with only your eyes. So let's get started and we can finish off celestial observation today. So first let's look at when you should observe. So the best time to observe in the night sky is when when a star or a celestial object is close to culmination. And this is because of one or two reasons. Essentially, when a star or object is close to culmination, it's the best time to observe in the sky because the star is at its highest and brightest in the night sky. And this lets us see some more of the detail and resolve that detail, and sometimes you can see the colour of certain stars. Now, why are they brighter and higher in the sky? Well, they're higher in the sky because culmination is the highest point that a star will reach in the sky, but they're also brighter in the sky because if you remember topic 1, we talked about atmospheric disturbances, and the stars at an observer's zenith has the least atmosphere to pass through. This means that they have less atmospheric disturbances to affect them, and so less effects of the atmosphere can be seen on stars, so less twinkling and less effects from seeing conditions. Now, information on rising and setting times will help observers estimate the halfway point at which an object will culminate in the night sky. Now, let's take a little look at dark adaption. So, dark adaption is the adjustment of an eye to low light intensities. So, this is where you are looking at the night sky and there isn't lots and lots of light there. So this involves the dilation of the pupil and the activation of the rod cells versus the cone cells. Now the rod cells are what see black and white, but they also see better at night, whereas your cone cells are your colour seeing cells in the eye. So the process of this dark adaptation takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes in darkness. So the rods are more sensitive to light intensity and they're over-sensitized in daylight. This means that they're absolutely brilliant for night vision, but they do need a little bit of time to adapt to the darkness so that they can work at their best performance. So let's look at something called Averted Vision, which has something to do with these rods and cones. So to stimulate these rods, as we talked about, our rods are sensitive to dark, but not to colour. So to stimulate those rods, because those are what we need to observe the night sky, they are outside of the optical axis. So we have to use a thing called averted vision. And this is basically where you don't look straight up, but you look using your peripheral vision, and this allows light to fall on the rods and increases their ability to be seen. So rods are sensitive to the bright, dark colours, so the black and white light, but not to colour, and they're offset from the optical axis. So cones, on the other hand, lie on the optical axis, but they can only see colour when the light is bright enough. So to see objects which are lower light, we have to use our rods. So there are a couple other factors which can affect the visibility of these objects. So when you're observing, you've got to look out for these things. And of course, when you're designing an observation program that is naked eye in your examinations, these are also a couple of things that you could and should mention. First thing is the landscape. Are there lots of high buildings, skyscrapers and trees that could block someone's view of the stars and other celestial objects? Is there lots of clouds in that day. So even small amounts of clouds can disrupt the view quite drastically. So measuring, or at least trying to avoid the presence of clouds, is absolutely a great idea when you're trying to do observations. The amount of light pollution and that is present over there, so things you're looking for are like sky glow or local glare, and I'll link what those mean just here. And if there's lots and lots of light pollution, it can make it more difficult to see these stars in the night sky. So it's extremely important that you evaluate the amount of light pollution in your observing area. You've also got to look at the transparency of the atmosphere. And this is things like if there's been recent rain, which can remove dust particles. And finally, something you should definitely look to is the seeing conditions, which relate to the steadiness of the atmosphere. And this is measured by, as we've talked about before, the 1 to 5 Antoni-Eddy scale. So, let's have a look at the things that you should bring to an observing session. The first thing I would be looking for is a torch, but you've got to fit it with a red light filter. This is because white light and other colours of light can ruin your eye's dark adaptation. So red light filters are a really great tool in avoiding your eye's dark adaptation from being disrupted. Another thing you should probably be looking for is things like multi-layered clothing, hats, scarves, gloves. It can get pretty cold when you're observing, so it's extremely important that you keep warm and are able to observe in comfort without being too cold. And a personal recommendation of mine is some food and some snacks. You don't know how long exactly that you'll be observing, or it might be a long time that you're observing, and it's extremely important that when you observe, you are well hydrated and just able to have the most fun. I personally recommend a flask of hot chocolate, but you can do whatever you want. Just make sure you don't burn your tongue. So there are a couple apps and stuff available that you can use to track where the stars are in the night sky, and you can use these as references. So you can use things like Plainspheres or star charts, which are one method that you can use for referencing while you're doing these observations. There are also a couple other options in terms of varieties of free apps which are available. They are quite easy to use, but not everything is often displayed, so they can be slightly confusing. If you do end up using an app, try to use a night vision mode so that you don't lose the dark adaptation of your eyes when you look at the screen. So, just to quickly summarise, the best time to observe the night sky is close to culmination because the celestial objects are at the highest and brightest in the night sky. Dark adaptation is the adjustment of an eye to low light intensities, involving the dilation of a pupil and the activation of rod cells in preference to cone cells. Averted vision is the process of looking outside the direct line of your vision in order to allow light to fall on rods, which allow for better night vision. Factors that can affect the visibility of objects can include the landscape, the presence of clouds, the amount of light pollution, both sky glow and local glare, the transparency of the atmosphere, the seeing conditions as well. Equipment that you can take include a torch, multi-layered clothing, hats, scarves, gloves, red light filter, and maybe if you want a flask of hot chocolate. Finally, there are apps available that you can use as references, but you can also use Plainspheres and star charts as references for your observing program. Have fun with your observing, stay safe, and I'll see you guys again next week. Bye!